Alright people, welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News in Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover a particular day's current affairs in a short span of time. Now you need to revise this lecture just after watching it because otherwise these current affairs would quickly skip your memory. So revise this lecture from the notes provided by us. Now these notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel and the link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section just below this video. Alright then, enough of the introduction. Let's straight away jump into the lecture. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. So let's begin. So daily current affairs, 13th of January, Tuesday, and here is the topics list. Number one topic is behind ISRO's rocket's failure. We all know that ISRO's mission launched through PSLV, well, that mission failed because of rocket failure. Now, what were the technical reasons behind that? We'll cover this. Then topic number 2 is related to US brings India into Pax Silica. There has been some thaw in US-India relationship and the evidence of that thaw is that US has invited India into its group called Pax Silica. Now what is Pax Silica? We'll talk about this. Then topic number 3 is why Taiwan is important for USA. Well, after US invasion of Venezuela, people are saying that what is stopping China from invading Taiwan? But Donald Trump has issued some threats to China regarding its plans with respect to Taiwan. Now, why is Taiwan so strategically important for USA that it can risk threatening China on it? We'll talk about this. And then topic number 4 is Venezuela's heavy crude oil. Everyone knows that USA basically did what it did in Venezuela because of the oil wealth that this country has. But Venezuelan oil is not of very good quality. Now, what quality it is, we'll talk about this. And topic number 5, very interesting, Kashmir's rich Buddhist past. Because a stupa was uncovered by archaeologists in Kashmir, which links Kashmir's Buddhist history, Buddhist past. So these are the 5 topics that we shall zero in our attention on. Let's start discussing these topics one by one. All right. Starting with topic number 1, and that is behind ISRO's rocket failure. Now, this is the second time in a row that PSLV rocket has failed to deliver satellites in polar orbits or sun-synchronous orbits. The first failure was last year in May, and the second failure was this month, January. Now, PSLV rockets, well, they started their work in 1993 for ISRO. And these rockets are basically called the workhorse of ISRO because they have been so successful. They have delivered missions like Chandrayaan-1, Mangalyaan even, interplanetary missions, and they have basically delivered so many satellites for ISRO in the low Earth orbit or polar orbits, right? Now, PSLV has been the workhorse of ISRO, but recently, there have been some failures. Now, why are these failures occurring? We'll investigate this matter because a lot of articles were published in the newspaper regarding this point. Okay, so let's quickly talk about this. So behind ISRO's rocket failure. So ISRO's PSLV C-62 mission on January 12th, 2026 marked the agency's second consecutive failure of the PSLV rocket due to third stage issues. Now, what is third stage issue? We'll talk about it. Okay, don't worry. Following PSLV C-61 failure in May 2025. The mission carried 16 satellites, including DRDO's primary payload. So maximum satellites were from DRDO for India's defense and foreign ones also. But these satellites were not delivered in sun-synchronous orbit because of third stage failure of this rocket called PSLV, Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. Okay. Now for this, you need to understand what are these stages in a rocket. Okay, that's very important. So PSLV is a rocket that delivers satellites into the orbit. Okay. Now PSLV is a 4-stage rocket. If you have seen rocket launches by ISRO on television, you must have seen this, that as the rocket climbs up in altitude, well, some things drop, right? As it climbs upwards, few things drop, right? Now those droppings are basically the stages of a rocket. Okay. As soon as PSLV rocket climbs upwards, first stage drops, then second stage drops, then third stage drops, then finally fourth stage drops, and the satellite is delivered into the orbit. Now these stages are basically fuel stages or propulsion stages. Okay. Now ISRO is a 4-stage rocket. Okay. In the first stage, these are the 4 stages basically. Okay, first, second, third, fourth. Initially, the rocket is powered by or propelled by first stage, then second stage, then third stage, and the last stage, very close to the orbit, is the fourth stage. Now remember, in case of PSLV, it is a 4-stage rocket. First stage is solid fuel, second stage is liquid fuel, third stage is again solid fuel, and fourth stage is again liquid fuel. Okay, so basically these are the fuel stages: solid propellant, liquid propellant, solid propellant, liquid propellant. The second stage fuel engine that runs on liquid is the Vikas engine. That was basically a very famous development. Okay, and there is a whole story behind this, conspiracy theories also behind this Vikas engine. Nonetheless, we'll talk about this sometime later. But the failure in ISRO's stage, or the 4 stages, basically the culprit is third stage. Okay, it is the third stage that got failed. Now, what was this failure? Take a look at this slide. So third stage mechanics. So in the third stage, solid fuel burns to gas, building combustion chamber pressure for nozzle thrust, and because of this pressure, there is rapid acceleration to sustain orbit against gravity. Okay, the rocket is basically pushed upwards because of this high pressure generated by gas, and this gas is created by burning of this solid fuel. But if in your third stage there is a manufacturing defect or leakage, this pressure drops dramatically. And when this pressure drops, the rocket is unable to reach higher altitude, closer to the orbit. And that's what happened in these 2 cases. Okay, this failure highlights vulnerabilities in ISRO's reliable workhorse. Remember, PSLV is called ISRO's workhorse. Well, this workhorse has some vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities were showcased once in May 2025 and now in January 2026. Okay, so remember this, and this table is shared in your notes. Do memorize each and everything in these columns and rows. Okay, all right, that would be all. Now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is US brings India into Pax Silica. Now, ever since Operation Sindoor, people have witnessed that Donald Trump hasn't been that warm towards India, right? We all have witnessed this because he has made some outrageous statements against India. Now, the reason is that US-India do not share very good trade relations, and Donald Trump has expressed that. We all know about it. Now, India and USA have been negotiating a trade deal which would basically warm up the relations again. Okay, they have been negotiating a trade deal, but that negotiation was stuck somewhere. Hence, the relationship further deteriorated, nosedived, right? But now signals are coming out that there has been some progress in those negotiations, right? And that is why USA, the evidence of that progress is that USA has invited India to join Pax Silica. Now, earlier when Pax Silica was formed, USA did not invite India, and people thought that thing to be the evidence of bad US-India relations. Okay, people were questioning Modi government's diplomacy also, that you used to say that you have very good relations with America, but they haven't even invited you. They haven't invited you to this close group called Pax Silica. But now, well, I think, and many experts also think, that the relationship is starting to warm up again. And that is why USA has recently invited India to Pax Silica. Now, the question is, what is this Pax Silica? And why is it so strategically important to USA? And why people are saying that India joining this strategic group, well, it would be really beneficial for India. What's so special about Pax Silica, basically? We will investigate this point. Okay, so let's begin. So USA brings India into Pax Silica. So what was in the news? US Ambassador Sergio Gore announced on January 12th India's invitation to join Pax Silica as a full member next month amid ongoing bilateral trade talks, with the next call on January 13th. So next negotiations would be on January 13th. This signals thawing ties. The ties were frozen. Now, well, that ice has begun to thaw, aligning with US investments in India's AI infrastructure. So this, if India joins this group, this will align with American policy, or the policy of American companies to invest heavily in India with respect to AI infrastructure. Okay, now this will give you a hint that this Pax Silica is related to AI, chips, and everything else. Okay, so what is Pax Silica? So Pax Silica establishes a secure silicon supply chain, and silicon is extremely important for manufacturing of chips. But currently, China kind of has a chokehold on supply of silicon. That is why USA was searching for an alternative supply chain, and that is why USA partnered with like-minded countries to secure supply chains for silica and reduce their dependencies on China. That was the purpose of Pax Silica. So Pax Silica establishes a secure supply chain, okay, silicon supply chain from critical minerals to AI infrastructure. So it's not just restricted to, well, silicon, it also encompasses critical minerals. Again, critical minerals are very important for all the new technology that is coming up. Emphasizing economic security as national security under Trump. So Trump has combined economic security with national security. That is why Pax Silica was important. Now, what will happen in this Pax Silica? It promotes joint ventures, co-investments, and protection against countries of concern. Basically, they are talking about China only. Protections against China, because China can anytime restrict the supply of these critical minerals, and the economies of all these countries, important countries which are kind of adversaries to China. Well, if supply of critical minerals is restricted to these countries, well, then their economy would not be in a good space. So that is why it was very important. Now, it was launched by USA on December 12, 2025. Pax Silica counters China's dominance in silicon AI supply chains through trusted allies. Now, this Pax Silica initially excluded India, which people were saying was because of bad ties between India and USA. US-India were not sharing like warm relations. Let's put it this way. Relationship was not that great. Okay. And the evidence of not being that great was, well, people pointed to lack of invitation for Pax Silica. Okay. Now, the objectives of Pax Silica are threefold. Number one, reduce dependency on China, foster trustworthy AI ecosystems, trustworthy with trustworthy countries. ICT, information and communication technology, data centers, foundational AI models, drive investments in AI, semiconductor design, lithography, manufacturing of chips. Okay, now take a look at this table. So Pax Silica, the founding members were US, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, UK, Australia, which signed the initial treaty declaration. Then participants, these are not full-time members, are Netherlands, Israel, UAE. And the new invite to this group is India, which will join the group in February 2026. Okay, so these are basically, well, this is all you need to know about Pax Silica. So these were the founding members, these are the core members, new joinees, and the latest joinee, India. All right. Now, why is it important for India, this invitation and this joining of Pax Silica? Well, because India is also worried about China restricting supplies of critical minerals to India. India and China don't see eye to eye on many things, right? Plus, there is this burning border dispute also. So India and China are not friends. That everyone knows. So this is very important for India. Okay. Significance, opportunities, access, top AI, semiconductor chains, JV investments to build infrastructure, boost Atmanirbhar in electronics, PLI scheme, synergy. Then geopolitics. It strengthens, well, already existing partnerships with America. So this is there. The challenges still exist. Aligns with US standards without compromising data sovereignty. Okay. The challenge for India is that India will join this group, but India does not want to share its own data. Now, this group might ask India to share its own data. So India has to balance this. Okay. Trade deal linkage risks. USA might link the extent to which India will join Pax Silica with what concessions India would give in the trade deals. So these are some of the risks, but overall, good development, right? Now let's move on to third news item, and that is why Taiwan is important for USA. Now, after USA invading Venezuela, the doors are open, floodgates are open. Now, any country, if it is strong, can invade any other country violating international law. Nothing can stop them because they will point towards USA. That USA can do this. Okay, so if USA can violate international law, so can we. So this means that China's old dream of unifying Taiwan with China, well, there are huge risks that China might invade Taiwan soon. Now, USA, especially Donald Trump, has recently threatened Xi Jinping threatened with Taiwanese invasion. Okay, they have said, or Trump has said, that if Xi Jinping tries to invade Taiwan, well, we will do something about it. Now, why is Taiwan important for USA? Now, as far as US-China-Taiwan relationship, this triangle is concerned, we have discussed this triangle before in our previous current affairs lectures. Okay, so I won't get into that. But what I will talk about is that why is USA so eager to defend Taiwan against China? Okay, so we will only investigate the reasons. We won't get into the historical evolution of ties. At one point of time, USA used to recognize Taiwan, then it recognized the communist China, okay, and de-recognized Taiwan. All these complexities, well, we have already discussed this, so I won't get into that. So let's straight away jump into this topic and investigate the reasons behind the American threat to China against Taiwan. Okay, so let's talk about this. Why Taiwan is strategically important or important for USA. US President Donald Trump, in a January 2026 NYT New York Times interview, downplayed China invasion risks of Taiwan while warning Xi Jinping against it. Okay, amid US 11 billion arms sale, USA already exported so many arms to Taiwan. And in retaliation, China was not happy with this. So China conducted military exercises in the Taiwanese Strait. Now, to understand the mechanics of this entire matter, you need to understand, well, the geography of the region. Okay, so take a look at this picture. So this is China and this is Taiwan, and this narrow body of water is known as Taiwan Strait. Okay, and this strait is very important for USA. Okay, now, what is the importance for USA? First of all, Taiwan Strait handles 20% of global maritime trade, 50% of container fleet. 50% of container fleet, 20% of global maritime trade passes through this strait. Any Chinese blockade in this region would disrupt American allies like Japan and South Korea. They would, basically most of their supplies come from this trade route. So Japan and South Korea would suffer, and both of them are American allies. Then geopolitical. Midway First Island chain contains China in West Pacific, basically China contained policy. Okay, 68% of advanced semiconductors are manufactured in Taiwan. Okay, and semiconductors are used in electronics. Every electronics that you see around you, every gadget that you see around you, run on these chips, which are made up of semiconductors. 68% of those semiconductors come from Taiwan. If China invades Taiwan and occupies this, like USA occupied Venezuela for its oil, China might occupy Taiwan for its chips. Then China would possess these 68% of these chips and can dictate terms to the world that we are not exporting chips to you, we are not exporting chips to you. So it's a very complicated matter. And the recent trigger to this matter was that USA basically sold arms, weapons to Taiwan, and China conducted military drills. So things are pretty hot in this area. Clear? So basically, there are two major reasons why Taiwan is important. First of all, because of its chips, semiconductor chips. And number two, this Taiwan Strait is very important basically for global maritime trade. All right. Okay, so we'll focus on this only, though as far as the historical evolution is concerned, a table is shared in your notes, so do go through that as well. Though we have discussed this historical evolution of ties between this triangle of ties between China, Taiwan and USA, we have discussed this exhaustively in one of our previous current affairs lectures. So I won't get into that again, but the details are shared in your notes. Okay, and now let's move on to next news item, and that is Venezuela's heavy crude oil. Now, we all know, in fact, it's pretty clear because Donald Trump himself said this, that, well, we will possess Venezuelan oil. If anyone wants to buy Venezuelan oil, they have to buy it from us. So basically, earlier, American presidents used to camouflage their greed with democracy, rule of law, that we invaded this country to establish democracy in that country. They used to camouflage it, or they pretended to camouflage it. Donald Trump is not one of them. Donald Trump doesn't camouflage anything. He has directly, plainly said that oil was very important for us. That's why we invaded Venezuela. It's very important for us. Now, the thing is that yes, Venezuela has the largest reserves of crude oil in the world, way more than Saudi Arabia. Okay, Venezuela does possess this oil wealth. But the quality of oil produced in Venezuela Well, it's very thick, viscous, heavy. It's called heavy crude oil. Now, you require complicated refineries to refine this heavy crude oil. Saudi Arabia produces a particular category of crude called light crude oil, light sweet crude oil. That is very easy to refine, and that is why Saudi Arabia is the champion when it comes to these basically crude oil exports. But Venezuela is not a champion because to refine Venezuelan oil, you require high level of technology, high level of spending on infrastructure. Now, USA says that it has that much money, it has that technology, but it is going to be very difficult to capture all of this oil wealth, okay? Because there are problems with Venezuelan crude oil. So, what are those problems, and why it would be difficult for even America to spend that much money in Venezuela to capture all that oil and be able to sell it to the world? So, let's talk about this. So, Venezuela's heavy crude oil. So, in the news, the US, world's top oil producer exporter of light sweet shale crude, even USA itself produces crude oil, but that is shale crude, seeks Venezuela's cheap, heavy sour crude to optimize Gulf Coast refineries built for it, post Maduro's ouster. Now, the kind of refineries, oil refineries that are required to process Venezuelan, bad quality Venezuelan oil, well, USA already has those refineries in its Gulf of Mexico coast. Okay, Texas, Florida, all these areas, basically Texas, there are those refineries. Venezuela holds largest reserves, mostly viscous Ornico heavy crude. That's the name of the category of crude oil with Venezuela, Ornico heavy crude. Now let's take a look at the categories, okay, crude oil types. So number one is light sweet. This is the best quality of crude oil. It has low viscosity, that means it is not that thick. Plus it has low sulfur also. Sulfur content is also low, and it is very easy to process this. Now, the examples of low viscosity, good quality crude oil, light crude oil, is US shale oil, and Middle Eastern oil is also like that. That is why Middle East has a dominant share in global oil markets. Okay, simple refineries are required for this, to process this. Now, let's talk about the second category, heavy sour. It is highly viscous, has heavy sulfur content, high sulfur content. It is found in Venezuela's Ornico province, Canadian sands, and even in Mexico. It is cheap. This crude oil is cheap. And it requires complex refineries to basically refine it. Those complicated refineries are there with USA. They're also there with India as well. Okay, so Venezuelan crude oil can be beneficial for India as well if USA allows us to buy it from them. Nonetheless, these are the two categories. Now, challenges for revival of American investments. At one point of time, American oil companies were there in Venezuela. Then a dictator came in called Hugo Chavez. Okay, Hugo Chavez nationalized all these oil companies and blocked America from basically extracting this crude oil. Since then, American-Venezuelan relations are not that great. Okay, now Hugo Chavez was succeeded by Nicolas Maduro, and the relations were there. But now, when Maduro is ousted, now American oil companies are thinking about reviving their investments in Venezuela. But there are challenges. First of all, you require huge infrastructure. The previous infrastructure that was there to extract Venezuelan oil, it has decayed. There is heavy corruption and underinvestment in the region. Then, even American oil companies are cautious of bringing in that much money into Venezuela because they're not sure of safety and security in Venezuela. Okay, and there are technological hurdles also because it is a heavy crude oil, and it requires dilutants, good refineries, and many other things which are costly. Now, American companies have that technology, but they are not ready to invest that much money in Venezuela because of this reason. Safety and security, basically. All right. And yes, what are going to be the geo-economic implications? So America would gain globally. Supply of crude oil would increase if American investments are successful. Overall crude oil supply in the world would increase. Now, whenever supply exceeds, prices drop. And if all of this happens, very good news for India because India imports a lot of crude oil. Okay, this would also give India an alternative from Middle East. Okay, but there are risks because already there is political instability. Environmental issues are also there. If you extract so much oil in such a short span of time, there are going to be environmental costs. But the major issue is political instability. We do not know that this new government in Venezuela, I mean, in how much control this new government is, we do not know. So nobody can give security guarantees to these American companies in this region. And this is one big issue. All right. And that would be all as far as this topic is concerned. And now let's quickly shift our focus to a fascinating news, and that is Kashmir's rich Buddhist past. Now, archaeological studies were being done in Kashmir, and they basically unearthed a stupa, which is a 2000-year-old stupa. Okay, 2000-year-old stupa. Now, this showcases Kashmir's Buddhist past. At one point of time, Buddhism dominated Kashmir. Okay, so that is why this archaeological study is significant, because basically it dismantles the earlier held theories about Kashmir, that what kind of religion was followed in Kashmir and many other things. The study dismantles all of that. Plus, it gives us new information about Kashmir's linkages with the Silk Road, Gandhara Silk Road, and the rest of the world. Okay, Central Asia basically. So it is a very important study. Nonetheless, we'll focus on, because it is important for our preparation for history, art and culture. Well, we'll focus on Buddhism in Kashmir. Who started it? What was its progression? Everything. And the key Buddhist sites in Kashmir. Okay, so let's straight away dive into this. So Kashmir's rich Buddhist past. So yeah, archaeologists unearthed 2000-year-old Kushan-era Buddhist stupa and monastic complex at Zahanpura, Baramulla, North Kashmir, J&K, in 2025, spanning 10 acres, largest such site in Kashmir Valley. Now, this site links Kashmir to Gandhara trade route, which is Gandhara, which is now in Pakistan, and Mahayana origins. Okay, the kind of Buddhism that originated in Kashmir was Mahayana. You all know that there are two sects in basically three sects in Buddhism. One is called Heenyan, which is also known as Theravada Buddhism. Then there is Mahayana, and then there is Vajrayana, which is followed in Tibet. Okay, Myanmar, Southeast Asian countries follow Theravada. Mahayana was pretty popular in Central Asia, even China, Korea, and Japan. Buddhism spread to these areas as well. Vajrayana in Tibet. Okay, so Kashmir was linked to Mahayana Buddhism. Remember this fact. Now, what were the archaeological finds? These are given in your notes. So, 3 stupas were uncovered, man-made mounds, and many other things were uncovered by J&K Archaeology Department. Now, key Buddhist sites in Kashmir. So, in northern Kashmir, there is Kanisapora, Ushkur, Zahanpura, which was recently discovered, and Harwan in Srinagar. This is the central Kashmir. Srinagar is in central Kashmir. In southern Kashmir, these are the sites. All sites need conservation, because we all know security situation hasn't been that great in Kashmir Valley for so many years. So archaeological preservation doesn't flourish in those areas which are, well, there is insurgency. Okay, now things have stabilized and we are uncovering these sites. So it's good news that these sites would be preserved. Clear? Now, Buddhism in Kashmir. So it started not with Ashoka. So this was a preconception that people had, that it was Ashoka who was responsible for spreading Buddhism to Kashmir, but it's not that. In pre-Ashokan times also Buddhism was there. Okay, then Ashoka, then Kushanas, and then even in post-Kushan period, Buddhism still flourished and then dramatically declined, as the case was in the rest of the country. Now, what is the significance of this discovery? Well, it illuminates Silk Route trade between Kashmir and Silk Route in the Central Asia, because through Silk Route, Buddhism was spread to all these Central Asian areas. You can find Gandhara art influence in stupas and viharas. Sculptures drawn on these stupas and viharas showcase Gandhara art. Now, you must have studied art and culture, and you know there were 2 forms of post-Mauryan art, Gandhara and Mathura. Then it challenges narratives prevalent before. The narrative was that in Kashmir, Buddhism was not prevalent before Ashoka. Well, it was. And this would also give cultural tourism boost to Kashmir, because, well, there are so many Buddhist countries who want to visit these ancient Buddhist sites, like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Cambodia, many countries, Myanmar. So this would give a boost to Kashmir as well. Okay, so this is the significance. And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it would add more value if you are number one, consistent and regular with this lecture series, and number two, you revise this lecture from the notes provided by us on our Telegram channel. So in the hope that you will do that, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.